My name's Rob Spring. I'm the event manager for BBC Radio 1. I work across about 15 events of the year. This is our flagship event, so it takes up a lot of my time. We start the process pretty much straight after Radio 1's big weekend, but then I also deliver other big flagship BBC events such as the BBC Music Awards, Radio 1's Teen Awards, 1Extra Live, etc. But this is primarily my main focus.
A lot of outdoor music events can sort of bed themselves into a regular location, and over a period of time they'll learn about the site and how it works and its challenges and what works, what doesn't. How does it work when you're changing it every year, and how difficult is that for you guys to manage?
It sort of keeps it interesting and keeps it fresh, which is the positive side. All of the learns that we learn every year, though, they sort of get... You can try and carry them on, but obviously every single site is different. You have different traffic management, infrastructure variations at each site. You have different complexities as well, such as the gradient of the land, access points, etc. So it pretty much varies all the time. I think the one thing that does keep our event fresh, though, is that we move it to a different location every single year, and we don't always formalise to one site layout, one setup of where the stages are, where the bars, toilets, infrastructure is, also the landscape around you as well. So we've really played to the castle this year. We've really played to the natural gradient at the main stage as well to make a nice auditorium, and you can see the River Exe in the background. And we really try and tailor our site and the way we operate it to the reasons why we choose a site in the first place as well.
So this year's Radio 1 One Big Weekend is at Powderham Castle, just outside of Exeter. Tell us what the decision was behind choosing this particular location.
We barely ever come down to this part of the world because you've got Glastonbury, which is a massive festival, and we try and go to areas that are slightly unserved by the festival scene and also by live music. We always perform well in Exeter as well, so this year we decided to actually give a present back to our loyal listeners. Last year when we announced Norwich, we had a massive backlash on Facebook, social media from our fans down here. We scouted out many sites in Exeter and the surrounding areas, and I think we had to come here. There are some difficulties which we have taken on board, such as the one road access in, etc. But we had to come here. I mean, in terms of a backdrop, you can't get better than this.
What methods are used by the BBC to actually analyse and choose the site and the location of it within the UK?
We always pull on our stats first in terms of demographic. Also, we have a look at where our industry impact is. With this event, we never really want to impact the festival market or the commercial operators. And then after that, we speak to the local councils and see what sites are on offer, and then get our site manager and production manager and health and safety manager down in order to assess the sites before we actually select them.
And just explain the ticketing process.
We weight the pots, so it's very much a local festival. So 60% of the tickets went to Exeter and Timbridge. 35% went to the rest of the southwest, and then 5% to the UK.
And have you had to deal with any issues relating to sort of secondary sales and things like that? Is it something that you're aware of?
Yeah, we always were with them because the Radio 1's big weekend is free. We work with our partners such as eBay, Facebook, Gumtree, and they will actually take the tickets down as well, so that with free tickets, there's sort of clauses where you can't commercialise on them or resell them. So it's always an issue, and I'm sure there's on-the-ground distributions happening as well, which we can't control. What
are you most excited about seeing this weekend? What's really sort of got you going when you're looking at the production as it goes in?
I think we've put some interesting things in ourselves, so I'm sure Dick's going to talk to you about our video pods that we've got on our main stage screens. And they're really interesting because it will give us a really distinctive look across the festival scene as well. That's important. Bastille have got some amazing production coming in. I'm sure Coldplay, our headliners, have as well. And I think it's always good to see the first festival kick off in the season, so that's what I'm excited to see as well.
Joining us now at Radio 1's One Big Weekend is production manager Dick Tee. Dick, thanks for taking the time out on this very, very busy day to join Event Industry News.
My pleasure. Good to be here. Thanks for coming down.
Let's put things in context. We're on the Thursday afternoon. The show opens on?
Show opens on Saturday morning. So, we're in a big production load-in day today. We got screens, PA coming in. We did lighting load-in yesterday on the main stage and the second stage, and today it's mainly audio and video coming through.
When we were speaking a little while ago to Rob Spring from the BBC, he mentioned that part of his remit is to come up with some very creative ideas and things that they would like to see delivered. And what they love about working with you is that you then gets handed off and you can deliver realistic and practical solutions to some of the creative elements. What are some of the things that you're going to be working on that the BBC have come to you with this year?
Yeah, Rob's great like that. You know, I always go back to him and say there are no problems, just opportunities to excel. Sometimes he gives me a good challenge, but no, we wanted to come up with something different this year with the on-stage lighting. And so the lighting designer, in fact, from Neg Earth, came up with some lovely square trusses, 3 of them across the top of the stage. And then I sort of said, well, maybe we could put those on kinesis and we could change the up and down and the, you know, side to side. And then Rob said, how about putting screens into the middle of them? And so this whole thing has grown, and we've got these, what we're calling the LED pods on stage now, which will give a great different, you know, aspect to the whole thing. So we've got a rear screen, and then when you look up into the roof, there are 3 screens across the whole of the lighting grid up in the roof, which is great.
When you're working with such a big broadcast element, both radio and TV, and particularly TV, how difficult is it to juggle what works for the actual live audience that's going to be at the site and also what's going to work on camera?
Yeah, I mean, the BBC, obviously, they're making these, you know, they're doing these shows and events for either broadcast on radio or on television. So we're working to very tight deadlines when we get round to the show itself. Everything is to the minute, particularly if it's going live, or particularly live as straight out and in broadcast. Again, it's down to the teamwork. You know, the stage managers we use, people like Chalky, have done this sort of job for years, and total trust in the suppliers to be able to make sure that we can hit all of those different slots. The traffic management, particularly here in Powderham, has been a very challenging project, you know, to work out getting the artists on and off site. It's Devon country roads and that sort of thing. Once we get to site, there's a whole artist liaison team looking after the acts and their requirements backstage, hospitality, dressing room wise, and my team will look after the technical production. We've got Chalky on the main stage and a guy called Joe Clark on the second stage in New Music We Trust. And in fact, we've got BBC introducing as well, with John working on the stage management there. Again, good teams. They have to work quite closely with the BBC floor managers, who are giving them instruction as well as to when they're ready to start recording, and vice versa. So it's an extra tier. Normally the stage manager would say, right, we're ready, check the watch, yes, we're on time, and away the act goes. But we can't actually go until we get clearance from the BBC, because we need to know that they're all ready as well. So it's an extra tier to just be consulted and to make sure are all in sync before we actually go, yes, play.
You also mentioned before we came on air today about a new hearing loop system that's going to go in, which is quite a big technological development, but will really help to open up the audience to on a wider scale.
Yes, I mean, we've had hearing loops before at these events with varying degrees of success, and I think last year when we did the big weekend in Norwich, the loop worked, but it picked up a lot of ambient audience noise. There were problems with it. The BBC are very keen to sort of maintain a gold standard for helping and looking after disabled people. So we tried to find a way of improving it this year, and actually spoke to a company, Ampetronic, who manufacture hearing loops, and you get them in shopping centres and theatres and malls and that. And they're coming down with, you know, the latest gizmos and equipment to put the loop in for us on the viewing platform. So it's quite unusual for a manufacturer to be coming in, and they're doing it very kindly for sort of expenses only, and hopefully this will mark the start. I think there's a big growth to happen in this, and talking to these manufacturers, there doesn't really appear to be a hire industry on that at the moment, and I think that again is where the BBC are sort of striving to perhaps show and lead the way.
Are you able to translate procedures from year to year, in spite of the fact that you're having to change site as well? How much of it can stay the same?
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But having said that, every site is different, and I think the procedures are the key to it, rather than the actual sort of individual detail. We know when and where we need to be doing different things throughout the weekend. We know what sort of equipment we want, but we can't just take the file off and dust it down. Every site is different, it has its own challenges, and I think we always strive to look quite critically at last year's plan during a sort of a debrief process and say, well, that worked 80%, but let's see if we can get it 90% this year and 100% maybe the year after.
Joining Event Industry News now is Frankie Tee. Frankie, you're Deputy Production Manager for Radio 1's One Big Weekend. Tell us a little bit about your job role and what it entails.
So as Deputy Production Manager, I'm basically the kind of second to Dick T. If there's any issues that he's not able to solve or he can't get to see something, then I'll go and respond to that. During the main advance for the event, I handle all of the technical liaison for all of the artists, what they want to do on stage, their performances, their requirements, that kind of thing really. Big Weekend it's a nice event really, because unlike other festivals where it's all streamed on Red Button and the labels are very much involved, they want the best show for all of their artists, so we're lucky enough to be able to accommodate most of what they want to bring. It's quite rare that an artist will turn up and not have any of their own production. It does make our job a little bit more difficult, but it means that we've got like great bits of lighting packages, we've got extra video screens, a lot of special effects, bits of pyro, confetti, and just like nice things. A lot of them are one-off bits of production that are unique to this show. It's very different to some of the other festivals and the other shows we do. Obviously they have different stakeholders and different things they want to achieve really. So for example, we've had a request in today from one of the bands that want to bring in a lighting package. Most of the time it wouldn't be a problem, but there's quite a lot of strobing in it, so there's several different departments I have to check with because of the being on TV, as well as the event health and safety manager. You've got a BBC safety manager, so it means that there's a lot more people that you have to take into consideration before you make a decision and tell someone yes or no on something. When you get to site, you realise that some things won't work as well as you thought they would because of the condition of the ground or the slopes. Even the main stage, for example, when it got built, the loading dock was a lot higher than we thought it would be, so we were having to make changes physically on site here as to how we construct that loading dock to actually make it accessible for our trucks coming in.
And what's the loading like? Aside from the main stage, is access as you would like it for the other stages around here?
I think everyone would always love massive roadways between stages. You can pass 3 trucks past each other and not have any kind of problems, but real estate is always small on these kind of shows, and you just have to make it work, and that goes back to the traffic management and having a good team in hand that can handle it. We kind of have to accommodate overnight load-ins. We would just struggle to get everything in otherwise. This year I think we've got one act coming in overnight on Friday, and then the other headliners are coming in more at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning rather than a full throughout the night load-in, which makes it a bit better for our crew. It's not such a long day.
I know that a lot of it may be under wraps, but are there any initial plans and ideas and things that you would like to see incorporated next year?
We're discussing next year. Next year may be a slight game changer. There's a number of locations that we're scoping out at the moment. I've been scoping them out since September with ongoing conversations. There's one location that will actually make us change the way that we do the big weekend, and maybe that will be a permanent change from that point on, but it's all up in the air at the moment.